Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my top 21 books to read in 2021. This is such an exciting list. I'm very much so looking forward to expanding my genres that I'm reading and also getting these books read. I will address just a couple of things first. If this is the first video of mine that you guys are seeing, hey, I'm Georgia, and the genre I primarily read is YA fantasy. So while my favorite genre is primarily YA fantasy, I do want to get into more adult fantasy, science fiction, mystery, thriller, that kind of deal. Contemporaries aren't really my thing, even though I am going to try and read a couple this year. I don't think there are any on this list. I want to especially branch out more into adult novels as well as horror and thriller. More psychological thriller because I'm not the biggest fan of like super scary, but that is that, and I'm going to try and have every book I talk about linked down below and give as best of synopsis as I can, even though it's not really my strong suit. Also, I am putting myself on a tiny little book buying ban until I knock down some of this list, and I have it more mapped out in my like 2021 reading goals after I finish 5 to 6 of the books on this list. So I get about a quarter of a way done with the list, I'm going to permit myself to go and buy like 2 to 3 books. So for my birthday, I probably am gonna break that rule a little bit, but that's just personal. So I am probably gonna break that rule a little bit, but I am gonna try and keep it more minimal because my goal for 2021 is really to take down my TBR and finish reading a lot of the books that I have on my shelves. With that being said, I have posted a most anticipated books of the year, and I'm not going to restrict myself from reading new and emerging authors' works, if that makes any sense. So with that all being said, we're gonna get into the video. I have a lot of books to talk about, and they all deserve equal attention. So we're gonna start off with the first book on my list, which is going to be Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This is an adult psychological thriller. I believe that's what it's marketed as. I don't think it is straight up horror. I think it's more of a psychological thriller. I kind of know the general premise, aka I might know the entire plot, but I really got into listening to psychological thriller like book reviews for the last half of this year, and I probably listened to more reviews of psychological thrillers than I actually read. But I'm one of those people who I don't mind if I know the plot of a book. I almost rather prefer to be spoiled because then I have something to look forward to. Whereas if I don't know, I'm like, this book could suck. I don't know. Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. No visitors, no nights spent away from the apartment, no disturbing the other residents, all of whom are rich or famous or both. So essentially we are following a character, I don't know if it's male or female, but they get a pretty decent gig at apartment or house sitting. I believe it's apartment sitting within this building. But the only catch is with the fat salary they're getting for house sitting, there are a ton of rules that come with, some of which I just read. So our character has to navigate that, and it kind of seems like there's something else going on. This will be the first Riley Sager book that I physically read because I did listen to the entire synopsis for Home Before Dark, which, great book. I know what it's about now, but great book. And then I'm also anticipating his new novel coming out in like July. I've heard a lot of great things, and it was on my most anticipated list. So the first book, definitely I'm looking forward to getting more into psychological thrillers. That's like my favorite. If you guys have any recommendations, I really enjoyed No Exit, The Woman in the Window. There are quite a few others. Silent Patient, I'm probably going to read myself this year because I loved it, but those are like the ones that I've like listened to and really enjoyed. So if you guys have any suggestions similar to that, please leave them down below. I really want to get more into psychological thriller mystery novels. All right, continuing on with psychological thrillers, but taking more of like a sci-fi kind of adult psychological thriller turn, we have Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I hauled this book pretty early on last year, and I have talked about it quite a few times, but I haven't got around to reading it. Essentially, we are following a man who gets in an accident of some sort, and when he wakes up in the hospital, he is surrounded by his family and friends, although he does not recognize his family and friends as his family and friends. His wife isn't his wife, his best friend is not his best friend, and things are just kind of a little weird at this hospital. So this is definitely one of my top books to read this year. Next is going to be Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. I've heard so many booktubers talk about this. I did receive it in a Fairy Looter Owl Crate box within these last couple months. The blurb says, "When the shadows rise, so will the light. When blood is shed, blood will call. By the king's table, for the order's might. By our eternal oaths, the line is law." So essentially, we are following a teen student who is anticipating to go to UNC Chapel Hill. She's just trying, you know, keep her head down, get through school, get good grades, do her thing, when there is a magical attack, and she discovers this secret society of Legendborn, and I'm assuming she finds out she's probably one of them. So again, I've heard such amazing things about this book, and I'm really, really excited to get into some pretty good fantasy this year. The next book is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I really am always in a good mood for some Greek tragedy and Greek mythology, so I'm again just going to read the blurb for this. It says, "Achilles, the best of all the Greeks, son of the cruel sea goddess Thetis, and the legendary king Peleus, is strong, swift, and beautiful, irresistible to all who meet him. Patroclus is an awkward young prince exiled from his homeland after an act of shocking violence. Brought together by chance, they forge an inseparable bond despite risking the gods' wraths." So this, I believe, is a male-male romance. We have some LGBTQA plus rep. I cannot tell you the amount of times people have said this is one of their all-time favorite books. It has ranked on their top 10 of 2020 or just their top books of all time, and it's been sitting on my shelf for quite a minute. So I'm definitely excited to read it. I want to get into a little bit more of Greek mythology this year. I always love a good Hades and Persephone retelling, and I think I'm really excited to read Achilles' story. The next one is kind of a twofer, and I am really trying to read Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights this year. I do have a bind up of the both of them, so it is the two books, but I will just be physically reading this one. And there's a little sticker that I couldn't get off. I have not read either of these classics. I want to read more classics in 2021. I never had to read Wuthering Heights in school. I have since realized that a lot of kids have, but for my exams, the course that I was in, we didn't have to read Wuthering Heights. We instead, oh my gosh, I can't even tell you what we read. It's up on my shelf somewhere. We had read Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Highly recommend it. I did love that book. And then we also had to read some boring ass philosophy book. I'm really not one for philosophy. I wanted to gouge my eyes out the entire time we did read it. I probably would have preferred Wuthering Heights as opposed to that philosophy book. I can't even tell you what it was called. I do have a retelling of Jane Eyre that I really wanted to read, but I want to know the actual story before I get into it. So I figured, what better timing than now? Read this bind up. It's really big. I think it's like nearly 800 pages and it's thick. So I just figured once I finish Jane Eyre, I can just continue the book and skip right into Wuthering Heights. And I feel like that would be pretty nice, pretty good. Next is going to be A Torch Against the Night by Saba Tahir. The fourth and final book, I believe, just came out, and they did just start selling the paperback of A Reaper at the Gates on Amazon. So I now give myself permission to read this book. If you guys check out a couple other of my videos, I have talked about the first book in this series quite a few times, and I'm really, really excited to continue on with the story. We left off on a pretty big cliffhanger at the end of the first book, but essentially we are following Elia and Elias, and it is a sort of desert set fantasy, and there's a caste system where Laya is more at the bottom of the cast, and she joins a rebellion after her grandparents' death and her brother is arrested. So we have that, and then on the other side of the spectrum, Elias is at the martial academy, something like that. He's in like their form of military schooling, and he is working his way up the ranks. He's one of the school's top students, and of course Laia and Elias's paths meet, and it obviously continues in this book. Super exciting about it. So I finally can get to reading this, and I think it's going to be probably another one of my top reads for the year. All right, next is a pretty chunky boy. This is going to be The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This has been so highly talked about on BookTube. This is the 10th anniversary edition. It has some really beautiful red sprayed edges. And the little blurb says, experience a tale unequaled in fantasy literature, the story of the hero told in his own voice. It's a tale of sorrow, a tale of survival, a tale of one man's search for meaning in his universe, and how that search and the indomitable will that drove it gave birth to a legend. So, pretty big book. I absolutely love this cover. I feel like this is a really stunning edition, and it was much prettier than the regular editions. And again, I want to get more into adult fantasy. Next is going to be Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I'm not too familiar about the story, but essentially we are following Laszlo Strange. He's a war orphan and a junior librarian, and I'm pretty sure in this he finds something within the library that he works at that kind of transports him into something else, some other world possibly. Oh wait, that's the premise of another book. Sorry, scratch that. He has been obsessed with the lost city of Weep pretty much his entire life, and I believe he gets approached with the opportunity to go and see it for himself. So, sounds super interesting. It is on my TBR for this month. So the word of the month for Books and Lala's Buzzwordathon was dream. So I am hopefully going to read this in January, and I will hopefully soon be able to give you guys a quick review. Next, of course, I got to keep Sarah J Maas book on here, is going to be The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J Maas. This is the novella or prequel to the Throne of Glass series. Essentially, we are just following Selena Sardothian and Sam. Does he have a name? A last name? I think it's just Sam. Super exciting. I think this is also going to be one of the first books that I try and tab, so that'll be very exciting. And then after I finish this, I think I am going to read Tower of Dawn, which I also didn't read while I was doing my Throne of Glass read. The next book is going to be The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. This book sounds right up my alley. In 2020, I read the Caraval trilogy and I absolutely loved it. And in this, we are following a traveling circus that pops up unannounced. There are no noticeable invitations informing people of the carnival's arrival, and a lot of interesting stuff happens here apparently. So I have not yet read any of Erin Morgenstern's work, even though I own it, but I'm really looking forward to reading The Night Circus this year. The next book is going to be Vicious by V.E. Schwab. I've heard amazing things about this, not so much on BookTube, but more from my real-time book reading bestie, and she said this was one of her favorite, if not her favorite, V.E. Schwab book, so I'll just read the inside flap. It says, Victor and Eli started out as college roommates, brilliant, arrogant, lonely boys who recognized the same sharpness and ambition in each other. In their senior year, a shared research interest in adrenaline, near-death experiences, and seemingly supernatural events reveals an intriguing possibility that under the right conditions, someone could develop extraordinary abilities. But when their thesis moves from the academic to the experimental, things go horribly wrong. I have also heard that this book has some trigger warnings for suicide, if not suicidal thoughts, something of the sorts. I'm not too sure. I have not read it, obviously, but I would say just go into it with caution. Next book is going to be From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I have heard that this book is the steam to end all steam. It is like the smuttiest book. I've seen it on Book Talk, I've seen it on BookTube, and I'm really interested. Kind of surprised I haven't yet gotten to it. And I've also heard that this author really enjoys Sarah J Maas's writing style, so I'm assuming they're going to be similar. I'm not sure if they are friends in real life or it's just inspiration, but it just says, a maiden, a duty, a kingdom. Chosen from birth to usher in a new era, Poppy's life has never been her own. The life of the maiden is solitary, never to be touched, never to be looked upon, never to be spoken to, never to experience pleasure. Well, I'm sure that's not true. Waiting for the day of her ascension, she would rather be with the guards, fighting back the evil that took her family, than preparing to be found worthy by the gods, but the choice has never been hers. I don't know too much about this, kind of don't want to know too much because I just want to be, I want to be caught off guard when the smut happens. I'm all right with that. But I do know that the series has continued on and there are other books out. The next book is going to be Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard. I have not read any of these books, yet I've heard so much about this series in general. I don't even know what it's about, but it has been sitting on my shelf for almost 3 years, I believe now. It just says, in school we learned about the world before ours, about the angels and gods that lived in the sky, ruling the earth with kind and loving hands. Some say those are just stories, but I don't believe that. The gods rule us still. They have come down from the stars, and they are no longer kind. I know that this is a pretty lengthy series, and I have been looking for new lengthy series to start, seeing as I finished Throne of Glass this year, and I don't have anything like that to occupy my time anymore, but I think this will be super interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it's about. I've heard a lot of hype, but I've also heard some mixed reviews. Who knows? All right, next is going to be Clockwork Prince by Cassandra Clare. I think I got about 200 pages into this book and then I put it down and never picked it back up again, and I don't know what happened, but I want to continue on with the Infernal Devices. I absolutely love Will, Gem, and Tessa. I think that they are one of my favorite groups in the Shadowhunters realm, and I do want to get to the last hours this year. I've already pre-ordered Chain of Iron, so I need to get on with it, and hopefully I can finish the next 2 books in hopefully this month. That would be really cool, and I think I'm kind of in the mood for more of the Shadowhunter realm. I love being in London. I love the story, and like I said, the camaraderie of this group is everything, and I really dig it. Next, I have some manga that I want to get to this year, the first being Uzumaki by Junji Ito. This is just a horror manga about spirals that appear in a town. That's all I know and all I want to know, and I definitely want to get into some of Junji Ito's writing this year, especially in 2020. I have heard nothing but great things about it. Next is going to be Deathnote, the 2nd edition Black, and this contains volumes 3 and 4. I already rapidly consumed the first Black edition volume, and that had volumes 1 and 2. I loved it. I really like the story. Light's cool, but our main Shinigami death god, Ryuk, is comedic gold. I really like him. I think he's funny. I don't know if he's supposed to be funny, but especially in the first Black edition, I was cracking up anytime he said anything. He's very funny. So I'm definitely excited to see where we go with Light and L, and I think I might watch the anime after I get through a couple more volumes of this. And the final manga that is on my top 21 to read is going to be Orange by Ichigo Takano. This, I do believe, has trigger warnings for suicide, and that is because I believe it's part of the main plot. This is the complete collection, the first one. There is a second one as well, and essentially we are following a group of friends in high school, I believe, and one of the friends receives a letter from her future self stating that one of the friends in the group is going to commit suicide and she has to stop it before it happens. And at first she's like, is this a prank? Like, who's doing this? This is really messed up, really sick, whatever. And then her, like, future self starts predicting and saying the things that are gonna happen. I just watched a South Korean film that they put on Netflix recently. It's called The Call, and that was like a big premise of that movie too, and I really liked how it was portrayed, at least like cinematically. Hopefully I'll enjoy it in a manga form. I think it'll be really interesting. Obviously the story is different. I don't think that this is horror, but I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, and I'm excited. I've heard great things, and it is pretty thick for a manga. All right, we're getting down to the dregs now. We just have the final 3 books, and the first one is going to be The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. I have heard so many great things about this. Again, I want to get more into adult fantasy and just adult works in general. And the back just says, they say that the Thorn of Kimor can beat anyone in a fight. They say he steals from the rich and gives to the poor. They say he's part man, part myth, and mostly street corner rumor. And they are wrong on every count. I think that this has been pitched as like a Robin Hood retelling of sorts. At least that's what it sounds like to me. I'm not positive. I will have the book again linked down below so you guys can read a better synopsis. Next is going to be The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Again, it's an illustrated edition. I think that this is the 10th anniversary or the 25th anniversary edition. I don't know. It's illustrated. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know much about this book, but a subscriber did recommend it to me, and then I also saw it on Book Roast's Adult Fantasy Recommends video. Again, I'll have the link to its Goodreads down below. All right, and we're finally at the final book I want to read in 2021. It is getting really hot in front of these lights, so we're just gonna get in with it, and it is going to be These Violent Lights by Chloe Gong. This is already on the New York Times bestselling list, and I believe it only came out last month. This is a 1920s reimagining in Shanghai of Romeo and Juliet. So we are dealing with Juliet Kai, who I think is in place of Juliet Capulet, and then Roma Montagov, who is obviously Romeo Montague. Sounds great. So with that Romeo and Juliet aspect, we also, it seems, have a monster that is lurking in the Huangpu River. And these two families have to put aside their differences to destroy the monster, or else there's not going to be shit left to fight over. So they'll be dead. So I think they've got to put aside their differences. That is the last book. And this was the Owl Crate edition, I believe. And it's beautifully designed. Absolutely beautiful. I unboxed this in my recent book box battle. I'll have it linked above. All right, guys, so it looks like that is it for me today. Those were the top 21 books that I want to read in 2020. I can finally stick these all into my bullet journal for my top 21 spread. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that maybe you got some ideas for top books that you want to read in the new year. Let me know down below what are your guys' top books to read this coming year, and if we have any that match up, if I missed any that are particularly amazing that I should get to. Feel free to let me know down below, but I think that's going to be it for today, guys. I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope you're having a great day and staying safe, and of course I will see you guys as always in my next video. Bye, guys.